Hey guys, welcome to our conference call this morning. This is Dr. Curtis Livesey with Dynamite Ag, and I am very pleased to be joined today by a couple of buddies down in Texas. We got Todd Carlton from Yield Higher Ag Services. Todd, say hi.
How are you doing?
Excellent, excellent. And Chris, would you say hi as well, please?
How's it going?
Good. I'm glad I got you both here. Well, guys, here's the deal for the conference call today. We just put it in record mode. I know some guys are having technical difficulties getting in, but Todd and I are both 360 Yield Center dealers. We're both independent reps, and we've both had a lot of guys asking about the new 360 Yield Saver. And there's a lot of sales pitch, and there's a lot of BS out there, quite frankly, on social media and stuff just you're seeing online. And so we thought it would be helpful if guys could have a no sales pitch approach to where they could hear a little bit about the Yield Saver from somebody who's actually run them. And that was where Chris was kind enough to come on and be willing to share his experience with us today running the Yield Savers. Right now, guys, the conference is in mute mode, which is to say that way we don't get a lot of background noise. So everybody is muted other than us three. So if you have a question as we go through here, if you hit *6, you'll be unmuted, and then you can ask Chris a question as we're going. In the meantime, like I said, Todd and I will ask Chris a few questions just to kind of get the ball rolling, and then like I said, if guys have questions, they can chime in. The only sales pitch we're going to give you today is this, guys. Like I said, Todd and I are both independent dealers, and he's down in Texas. I'm up in Iowa. Honestly, makes no difference to us. If we can help you out, we're happy to do so. My number is 641-919-5574. You can also find us at dynamiteag.com. Todd, tell them how they can find you, bud.
Best way to reach me is mobile is 936-650-8147. And if you look on the map, you can find myself or any of the guys that I work with down here in Texas. So all of us I feel are very well educated in 360 products, and we work as a team. So whether you ask Kurt or myself or any of the guys in Texas a question, all we're here to do is help solve problems.
Absolutely, and I should point this out too, guys. Todd and I both travel all over the country. So whether you're in North Carolina, Washington State, we both work with clients all over the U.S. So like I said, don't worry if you're not right in either one of our backyards. We're still happy to help you out. All right, enough of that. Let's get started. Chris, guys have got questions on the Yield Savers. So specifically, some of the questions that they've had are, about the lifespan. So talk to us a little bit about how long you've run the Yield Savers, what you've seen, and please be brutally honest, what you like and what you don't like. Just give it to us straight, buddy.
Well, we started the year, we run a 612C, 12-row wide, 38-inch row corn head. So the setup was we've actually had 4 different setups of Yield Savers, 2 rows apiece the beginning of the year, kind of looking at some different types of from the engineering side, from bristle stuff. So we started out, first 800 acres, had a few minor feeding issues on some of the different bristles, but as things kind of broke in on the first 200 acres to 300 acres, really got going good. What's amazed me as we've gotten going and the bristles wore out and the brushes at about, 1,200 acres is what they recommend for 100 acres per row. So we have a 12-row head, so 1,200 acres. What I found out, the life expectancy was at 1,200 acres, you could definitely see a little kind of some fatigue in the brushes. But as we've got to 1,600 acres, they were still performing to what my satisfaction. Even pushing into 1,800 acres, I was well satisfied. Now, what we found out, we harvest corn down here. We start at 16 moisture and we go all the way down to 12. And I know up north in Iowa, y'all kind of make fun of that, but that's how we do it. But what I was excited to see was we brought 2 rows in about 800 acres ago, and we are total, let me back up, we are total right now on the original set of ear savers at 3,600 acres. And so that is the total we're at now. What we've done is started changing out some pieces here at the end as the corn is 12, 13 moisture. And it is amazing what I have seen the last 4 to 5, 6 days. I made a video the other day of the amount of ear savings, the kernel savings on the ground. And with the 12-row wide head, I can sit on I've got it set up on rows 11 and 12 with the new ones. And you can just sit there and look at rows 10 and 9 out the cab versus 11 and 12. And it's at least 5 to 6. And our last few fields, 5 to 6, 7 bushels an acre difference. Now, that's that dry corn. Back up at 15, 16 moisture corn, you can still see a difference. What I like about, not only are we picking up, I feel like the kernels aren't falling through the head, the actual ear savers are protecting the deck plates as the ear comes down, it's coming down so harsh, and with the header pulling it down, it's actually you're creating a cushion on top of the deck plate. As the ear savers as the life expectancy wore out, it still gave some life. Yeah, you had a few more kernels fall through, but you actually had some protection where you had a lot less ear shell out of the head. I don't know if that answers the question. We're, like I said, 1,200 acres was recommended. We made it to 16, 17, 1,800 acres, in my opinion, before we probably needed to replace them, and we've gone all the way to 3,600 acres, and we've got about 300 left to go. And I still feel like that we have 2 rows on the head that don't have anything. They are still John Deere chains. We're still picking up a minor, small benefit. It's not 5-6 bushels like we are with the new ones, but we're still picking up maybe a bushel or so, just the protection of the deck plate.
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about the deck plates a little bit there, Chris, because I've got some guys actually doing seed corn up north, and some guys, for one reason or another, they were wanting to run their deck plates pretty tight. So talk about your deck plate settings and how, I mean, is this going to impact anything there? Can you run them tighter, looser? I mean, what's your take on
I've
that?
never ran deck plates this wide in my life. It actually makes me nervous running them until I get out and look, just kind of watching them work. We've actually widened them up. I would say, typically here we run about 1.5 inches on our deck plates. I would say we're closer to 1.75 inches, which for us is super wide. But yesterday I was moved to a different field and got into some really dry corn where it was really had a lot of header loss, and actually started tightening them up, trying to save it. It actually didn't help. What actually helped was going back to the original setting, getting back to my 1.75 inches, and just adjusting the speed of the header. And so for us, usually 1.5 inches, and we've been able to run at least 1/4 inch wider. And at first it was kind of an unknown. Felt like we should be getting more head loss with them being wider, but it actually was less. So you're able to run actually a little bit wider. And that's where I think the protection comes in more from the bristles on the ear savers than it is. You're able to run a little wider and run a little faster and do different things and get a lot less header loss out of the top or the ear shell. Go ahead.
What were you going to say, something there, Todd?
Oh, no, sir. I was just sitting there when he said it made him nervous. I just kind of had to chuckle a little. I apologize.
Well, no,
it's been a good learning experience. It was really neat to change the 2 rows. With the guys at 360, I requested. I told the guys I want to see what the life expectancy of these things were. We were going to push them to the limits and run them till they were pretty much, for lack of a better term, shot or not working anymore. And so, like I said, in the beginning, at 1,800 acres, I felt like we were still getting, a return back. But like I said, with the corn getting super dry the last 7 days or so, I wanted to put some new ones on. So if you did go in and replace, to see what the results would be when we really needed them. And I've been super, super pleased with what I've seen the last 7 to 10 days on this last set. It's just been amazing to sit in there and go through the field and watch those 2 rows with those brand new. Now we're up to, I think, 800 acres the last few days on those, and they're still holding up. I check the oil and the gearboxes every morning. Guys doing like this morning I did, inspected the bristles and inspected the chains and everything, and things are holding up really good. And we're at 850 acres on this set, and I feel like the next 300 acres will be right at 1,200 to finish, and there's not going to be any issues whatsoever. So I've been super pleased when it comes to what I've seen in the dry corn.
Well, let's talk a little bit, Chris, about cost, because that's the other big thing. With corn prices are headed the wrong direction, and so let's assume a worst case scenario here where we see corn with a 2 as the first number. These things are $600 a row, and
Correct.
I mean you're talking about 360 says a bushel and a half or 1.8 bushels or whatever it is. You're saying in dry corn you're talking more like 4, 5, 6 bushel. I mean, again, please be brutally honest. Based on what you've seen, are they worth the cost? What does it take to make them worth the cost? To share that with us.
Well, when I look at it, and I actually had, a couple guys from 360 down a couple weeks ago riding with me, and I said, well, from a farmer's perspective, to go buy these things every 1,200 acres and change them, I said, it's going to be cost prohibitive. And I said, we're as a farmer, we're always looking for ways to save money. I felt like at the beginning of the year when we started harvesting, we weren't picking up a huge advantage because our corn for us is 15, 16 moisture. We had very little header loss. And as the corn started getting drier, obviously we get more header loss. I felt like, well, we need to start, looking. So the point I was making to some of the engineers was we need to start with old brushes from last year and end up putting our new ones on when we really need them towards the end. And I tell them as a farmer, if you tell us 1,200 acres, we're going 1,800. I said, you tell us, whatever your recommendation is, we're going to stretch it farther, but especially like you said with, $3 corn or sub $3 corn. So what I felt like, was I getting my money's worth? I was probably picking up a bushel, half a bushel to a bushel at the beginning of the year. I was like, well, at that point in time, I knew I wasn't getting a return on my investment. So the question becomes, do you put, if a header's going over 4,000 or 5,000 acres and you need to change 3 times or 2 times, whatever the recommendation would be or however it works, can you get by with running some older ones starting out, or can you change them out, new ones at the end? Go ahead.
Was that you, Todd?
No, sorry, I just set my phone down. I apologize.
Okay. No, that's why I just, from the economics, for us, I feel like that the last 2 weeks of harvest, the last 2,000 acres that I run over, we run over about 4,000 acres with our machine a year. The last 2,000 acres is when I really need them, and I can double my money. For me, if I can get back 4 or 5 bushels an acre, it's worth the investment. Up there, I understand up there you're not going to pick up maybe quite as much header loss as we do, especially when you get down to 13, 14 moisture corn, even 12. It's tremendous. And so for my deal starting out, what I would do is actually start next year with my used ones. I would get into a rotation where I put new ones on halfway through the year, run them to the end of the year, maybe start the year with those for the deck plate protection, and then replace them halfway through the year, or go through 2 sets and kind of rotate out is what I'm looking at from my own personal farm to stretch them out and save that extra money. That's what I'm looking at. Instead of buying a brand new set at the beginning of the year and a brand new set at the middle of the year, maybe run the first set, stretch them into the to where I really need them and put a new set on to where I can finish the year. So that's what I'm looking at doing for my own personal farm. I'm getting enough return on my investment at the end to buy 2 sets and rotate them out. So
I think that's a great idea, Chris. And then also I will add this. I know that I talked to Jamie about this, Todd, and we got some guys up here saying, hey, can I just put the gathering chains on? And I should point out, guys, you do have to have these gathering chains because they are a new patented design where basically these are the blocks and brushes are, I guess, like molded on to those yield savers or molded onto those gathering chains. But you can run these gathering chains just as you would a normal gathering chain. And then like Chris is talking about, if you wanted then at that point, halfway through the season, if you wanted to go to the blocks and brushes and put those on there, then you're good to go. I mean, is that something you think that would work for us guys up north, Chris?
I think so. At first when we were here with the guys with putting them on, I was looking kind of, well, how much time is this going to take and this and that. But once we actually changed them out the other day, it's a simple concept. It doesn't take a lot of time. So I'm not afraid to, we'll change out. If you're doing a 12-row head, it'd probably take, 3 or 4 guys. Obviously, it'd take to undo all the bolts and stuff, maybe a couple hours in the morning. So what we do is we do 6 rows. If we were doing a 12-row head, we'd do 6 rows one morning, 6 rows the next morning, and be going. So that's what I feel like, to just run the chain. And to be honest with you, what we've seen, what I'd like to do for as many acres as I'm going is actually just have 2 sets of chains, rotate them out, because it's so easy to pop the chains off and have a guy stand there on the end and changing brushes. And, so that's kind of what we're looking at doing, is running the chains and then putting them on and eventually building up, because the chains are not wore out. We're not having any issues whatsoever with the chains, so we can run the life of them and keep some extra ones on hand as we change these things out. So.
Absolutely. I should ask you this too, Chris. I know that individual blocks, one of the nice things about this for maintenance, the individual blocks can be changed out. Have you run any fence posts through it or anything where you've had to change just an individual block and brush out as opposed to the whole kit or not?
I changed. We had one that came out the other day. I don't know if we hit something or if it just came. You just rotate disconnect your drive shaft, rotate the header to where that individual one is at the front either sprocket on the gathering chain, and it turns at 90 degrees. Take your drill, cordless drill, zip the screw out and change it out. It's just it's a minor. It takes more time to disconnect the drive and turn it the right where you need to be to change it than it does to actually change it. So we've had one across the whole header that we've had to change the whole year. We've had very minor issues, when it comes to maintenance on them. We haven't done a whole lot to them.
Awesome. Todd, you're down south, down there by Chris, bud. So you should chime in here. What questions do you have or whatnot? Because like I said, we haven't had a chance to play with these as much up north as y'all have down south.
Yeah. So I Chris, in January and last December, I was down in the valley, the Rio Grande Valley, and we ran those on a 612C as well down there. But that fall corn was even drier than what Chris had. And what we saw was, just like Chris, as it gets drier, the bushels that you're losing increased. It was the same thing, if not worse. And, you know, and I'm not going to pick on a specific hybrid or variety or brand, but there were some that were just a little looser, and when it hit the deck, it was like fireworks. You know, like myself and Chris, we were fortunate enough to work with the engineers, and as it's changed, and I think down here in the South, and I've worked in Iowa, but I know here in the South, whether it's Texas, Oklahoma, Tulsa, whether it's for savings in your cotton or your soybeans, you know, Select is $6-8 an acre for just trying to keep the yield in the grain tank when you're at $3 corn. I had a guy call me, and this was very interesting, but he was harvesting 75 bushel corn, which I know for the North doesn't sound like a lot, but some years that's pretty ideal down here. And he doesn't have very high populations, you know, 14, 16,000. So he's running half the fertilizer. So there's not that much cost in it. But his corn was so dry because we've been pretty drouthy in most of Texas after our flood. He said, I've got to put this in the grain tank. He said, because corn right now in Wichita Falls is $2.82 a bushel. And when he told me that, I mean, I was physically nauseous because I just never thought I'd see, you know, $2.80 corn, you know, with what inputs were this year. And
oh yeah.
And he's going to get him a set because Todd, I can't afford to lose any. And he said, I can't afford to have to go cultivate or spray. He said, we just can't spend money, and you know, we're not going to catch every single kernel, but if we can get the bulk of them and reduce our volunteer, because you know, around Wichita Falls, it is a drier part of the world, and so moisture concentrations are important. And for him, it was just kind of the full circle reason to buy it, and I found that pretty, even in that low yield environment.
Well, and it too, let's not forget, it's like Chris said, like, you know, it may not cash flow, guys, at the high moisture deal. So maybe what we do, I really like Chris's advice there, where you say, hey, we're just going to run the gathering chains, or we're going to run that first set longer than what they recommend anyway, and then get on that rotation deal. I think that's a really good idea. Just talk to me about any other. I'm going to bounce back to you. Any other things that you really dislike about the chains, and then we're next follow-up questions. Any other things that you really like that we haven't discussed yet?
Well, I joke about it because I actually check my own. Me and the guys check our own gearboxes every day. So you got to kind of work to get around the bristles of the chains to check the gearbox. And that it sounds a minor detail, but I'll pick on them. I think, man, you really got to work. But as they get wore, and so it's not an inconvenience, but it is. We're being very particular on our equipment and stuff. So when we get to messing with them, you know, and checking the oil in the gearboxes, I'm talking a minor issue that. In the morning, I pick on them. But as far as major issues, like I mentioned in the very beginning, we started harvesting in the year, and I felt like we had some feeding issues. And that, going back, and I didn't get to finish that earlier, a lot of that was because we were running our deck plates too tight. Because, like I had mentioned earlier, I was nervous about widening them out. And once we widened them out, we stuck the new ones on 800 acres ago and didn't miss a beat with feeding issues. And that's kind of, once I figured out kind of what I was doing and, you know, the comfort with what I was setting the header up, everything has just been smooth. As far as other negatives, I mean, I was intimidated at first. I was like, man, I'm not going to stop every 1,200 acres and change these out. But as I've seen the results, and as I figured out that we can push the life a little bit up, kind of, you know, understand how they work and everything, I feel like that, you know, once I've gotten experience with them, it's not going to be as big of an issue that at first I was like, man, I'm not going to buy it. You know, it's like, I didn't want to buy these and have to spend every 4 days because, you know, we harvest about 200 acres to 250 acres a day. Every 3 to 4 days, we're changing them out. But I don't think that's going to be the case. And from what I've seen, we can get by with is, you know, we're talking about just doing them on a rotation and different things. And basically, you know, changing a few out every day, if it's 4 rows or 6 rows or whatever. That was my 2 biggest concerns at the beginning. And from what I've seen so far, that's, it's minor stuff. What I like about them is the deck plate protection. I know I mentioned earlier, that's the biggest thing I like. I actually probably think that does more for the header loss than the actual saving the kernels from falling out of the header, is protecting that ear butt from hitting that deck plate and shelling out, because it's just amazing how many less years you always see them kernels just popping up in front of your feeder house as you're harvesting. And, yeah, we still see it, but it's not the amount that we used to see. And so that's what I feel like it was one of the positives that I didn't realize probably at the beginning what was going to happen. And that's probably the biggest thing that I took from them, is even after they wore out beyond their life, it still, gave some protection. It still gave, some kernel savings.
Awesome. Well, like I said, and that's good to know too for us guys up north, as far as what your realistic expectations, and that's what we were looking for here this morning, Chris. Well, guys, I'll tell you what, we've been on the phone here almost a half hour, and I want to respect everybody's time. And again, we are in record mode here. I'm going to take that off, and because this part, I know there's several guys that they've been messaging me on Twitter and Facebook and in my text messaging, just saying, hey, they were having trouble getting in, because I think we actually had too many people getting on the call at once there, and shut her down from too many participants, so that's good. But anyway, I will just end with this, and then, like I said, we'll shut the recording off, and then if guys have individual questions that weren't able to get on the call this morning, they can get a hold of Todd or myself. Todd, again, please tell them the best way to get a hold of you.
Yeah, again, the best way to call me is on my phone, 936-650-8147. And pop on the 360 website. They've got myself and all the guys that I work with here in the state of Texas on there. So pop on there and take a look, and I try to make sure all my guys have seen or run the 360 products. And if I haven't, I know some of them are coming up to proving ground. So give any of us a shout, or Kurt or whoever, because like I said, at the end of the day, we're here to help. And right now we're here to help fight some of these economic problems we're going through.
Absolutely. And again, the best way to get a hold of me, guys, is area code 641-919-5574. That's my cell phone number. You can also go to dynamiteag.com. I think most of the guys that are on here probably found us already on Facebook and Twitter, and that's where you can another good place to find us as well. But definitely check it out, guys. Like I said, if you got questions, Todd or I, either one, are here and more than happy to help no matter where you live. So I'm going to say thanks to Chris and to Todd for their time. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and kill this on record mode, and we'll turn it over for questions for the guys who are here on the call. So, again, if you got questions, guys, get a hold of Todd or I when you hear this recording, and we're happy to help you out. Give me 1 second, guys, and I'll be right back.